All right, so we are going to call the August 14th Board of Education meeting to order. Let's stand for the pledge.
The United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Can you call the roll?
Here. 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 Here.
Here. Here.
Here. Excused, yes. Matt, can you review the fire exits?
Yes, exits are in the back of the LGI.
Okay. Is anyone here to make a public statement? Seeing none, we will move on to the workshop, which is Anne Marie presenting on the tax warrant.
Thank you. I have a couple of brief slides. You're going to be asked later to vote on the tax warrant. So just a couple of facts before we ask you to do that. So we spoke about this during the budget process, but our levy increase for the budget is 3.64%, and that's at the tax cap. It's a little teeny bit less than last year. We were at 3.7, so we're kind of being consistent going forward. And again, just to kind of recap what we said this during the budget process, items that impact the tax cap calculation for Beacon. So again, our district levy could raise by $721,000 for a tax-based growth factor. So Beacon still being in the process of adding properties onto the tax roll. We're still in much better financial shape than maybe others in the county because of that. And our allowable growth factor is at 2%. It's usually at the lesser of, but CPI is well over 2%, so it's a max of 2%. And then just a reminder, we were able to allocate $3 million that we have in excess fund balance and reserves to help pay for the budget, which we talked about in the budget process. So changes in assessment value. So again, we're seeing an increase in assessments. I'm not understanding that it's people being reassessed on their properties, but again, it's more about adding to the tax rolls. So Beacon, Fishkill, and Wappingers on the homestead, so that's the homeowner rate, is going up around 11% in total. And we are seeing an increase in non-homestead this year, probably a little bit more than we had. So that is the commercial properties that are coming onto the tax rolls. So our tax rates for homestead, again, in 2023-24 is a reduction. It's down to 12.57, and those are the three municipality breakouts. The tax compared to 13.46 in Beacon for last year. So that, again, is more same levy amount that we do, and we spread it out over more properties, so the tax rate would be less. And our non-homestead, too, because of the increase in assessments, we are seeing a decrease tax rate per thousand for Beacon, Fishkill, and Wappingers in those areas as well. So this is kind of a comparison, and I have a chart afterwards. So I compared this year's tax rate to, I went back, and it's less than what it was in 2010-11, which I found very interesting. So being more on a pie chart, so we started out in 2010-11, and it gradually increased, and now it's starting to do a decline. And really the reason is that there's more properties here. So the tax rate is actually decreasing, which, as I will tell you in a second, is, if your assessment is staying the same, so like in the city of Beacon, if you have an average home of about, our average home in Beacon, $304,700, if you have the STAR exemption, you actually should see a tax decrease on your school tax bill.
I have a question about that, Anne Marie.
Sure.
Many of us received letters about our assessments increasing, though, based on the city. So will people who've received that increased assessment expect that they should see an increase in their
So
as well?
if everyone received an increase in the assessments, then everyone's assessment will increase. Hopefully it'll all increase the same percentage. Then you wouldn't see too much of a difference. So, but Kristen, if it, like, say for your house, for example, they felt that your house was and Flora's wasn't, then you may see a tax increase and Flora may see a tax decrease.
Okay.
Okay? So the assessments is not part of the school district. We get that information, it's through the city or the town, but we get the information from real property in Dutchess County. But that's a good question, Kristen, because people, who do get, I don't get notified if you get a letter, so some people who do get letters.
Yeah, that's sort of like been a separate discussion around Beacon, but the city seems to have sent out letters. Did you receive an assessment? Yeah, I mean, I don't know how many people here received, did you receive one, Eunice? Yeah, so many of us received letters saying that our homes have been assessed at a higher value.
Right. So depending on how it is compared to everyone else's will depend too on how your tax bill will come out. In the town of Fishkill with an average home and Star, again, the decrease is about $248 for the year, assuming, assessments stay level. And again, town of Wappinger's average home would see a decrease of $218. I did the calculation based on Star. I also want to mention about Star, if you recently bought your home or you make over the income limit, and that income limit keeps going down because they want people to not get the Star on their tax bill, they want to actually mail them a check. So if you don't see Star on your tax bill, you would get a check in September directly from the state of New York. So I just wanted to kind of put that out in the universe. If you don't see Star, people are buying houses here in our community a great deal, and they would not be getting the Star exemption. They should be getting the check directly from New York State. Does anyone have any questions? So once the tax warrant is approved, we give the information to Dutchess County. That will process the bills, and the collection will start right around Labor Day, which is around the timing we had last year. So 30 days penalty-free, and then another 30 days with a 2% penalty. Because M&T Bank is not collecting for us since COVID, the first 30 days, there is a period that you can bring your payment to the school district in the first 30 days of collection, and we'll take the check from there and send it to the lockbox.
Oh, interesting. Okay,
Okay? Thank you.
thank you. Okay, running through changes to the agenda. Let me pull this up quickly. Okay, so reviewing the agenda, we are striking 12.18, R, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. We have added 12.26, which is appointing probationary teachers. There's been a teacher added at South Avenue. And we have added 12.32, appointing a world language teacher at Beacon High School for the 2023-24 school year. I think that is it for now. So can I have a motion to adjourn to executive session to discuss the employment history of a particular individual and to discuss attorney-client advice? The board will return in approximately 30 minutes.
So
Second?
Second.
Okay. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Comments or questions? Okay, passed. I think I did that in the wrong order, but close enough. So we are back, and it is time for the superintendent report.
Thank you. So tonight we wanted to give an update just about one aspect of the capital project. And so I asked Perry Sheldon, he's a consultant, a capital project consultant that's been working with the district for the last 2 years. And he probably, maybe up here, what makes most sense for Perry? Here? This one? Perry was just going to give an update about something that we needed to put on the agenda tonight for the project.
Good evening. We're working, this is in relationship to the Brown Butte Middle School parking lot. The parent drop-off loop has had its first course of binder put in. We found that the parking area that is inside of that loop, the material isn't as we expected it. The blacktop, we mill off 1.5 inches of the top of the blacktop in order to receive a new layer. And when we milled off 1.5 inches, we were down to soil. So we did some test pits, test holes, and found that the sub-base wasn't as expected either. So there is a change order or contract that we're suggesting to be awarded to Clove Excavation for the removal and the reinstallation of new base and blacktop, the binder course. At that point, the work would then be taken back over by Consorti Brothers, who is the prime contract for that site.
So everything else with the project is, this is on track to be completed for the school year. Everything else is as well. This year, we also did the parking lot, are working on the parking lot at Sargent. We're doing hallway lighting and
Ceilings,
ceilings at
lights.
Forrestal and Sargent. Next summer is the much larger part of the project, Phase D, we call it, where we're going to be doing interior spaces in all 6 of our schools, educational spaces. But this is a pretty big change, and we wanted to bring it up.
Yeah, can you just reiterate why it's important for us to be voting on this now and to take care of this now?
Well, part of it is it's a requirement because of the dollar value that requires it. But this is a real infrastructure type of investment. The parking lot is something that we want to get it right the first time. The soil conditions weren't as we were expected. We've been struggling with that site to begin with. It's kind of been the perfect storm this year of some difficult soil and weather. The amount of rain that we've got has made it just that much more difficult to work with. And if we don't, I mean, there was an option. We discussed the idea of just blacktopping over what we found, but it would have given you a much shorter life. So this is an investment in the future, getting the right base in place, and getting the right amount of blacktop in place, so that the site can continue to operate properly for a couple of decades, easily a couple of decades before it's going to need any attention. And at that point, you'd be looking at doing just a recapping or resurfacing, not a tear out and a redo. So,
Okay, great.
Thanks.
Does anybody else have any questions?
Would be heard?
He's asking if the public can be heard about a question about the capital project?
Yes.
I don't know what the.
Only during
I
public
don't
comment.
know your rules. I apologize.
Yeah, no, it's okay. So we have public comment at the beginning of the meeting, so that portion has already passed.
It just seemed like an add-on.
No.
Yeah, I mean, just from having done a few of these now, this is not entirely unexpected that we discover that there's something different than what we had planned or expected. So,
Yeah,
as long
so-
as there's, yes, go ahead.
Yeah, to that point, we do build into the contracts as part of our planning process. We build allowances for each contract so that there is some amount of money for change orders that are expected, because it always happens. Generally, there's something that has to be done. This is larger than what that allowance is, and that's part of the reason that we have to come back to you, because it will change the contract value in getting this work done. In this case, we're actually having it done by Clove Excavation, who were using a piggyback contract that they have with Dutchess County Department of Public Works.
Can you explain that a little bit?
So, in all that we do, there's always a procurement process that we have to follow. And there are different ways of being able to do that. The public bid is one way in which we do it, in which we put it out as a advertised bid with the plans and specifications that then anybody who's qualified is welcome to bid on the work. And that's the way we do the bulk of our capital projects. One of the alternatives is, actually there's a couple. One is to do a purchase off from a shared a cooperative bid. That means that some agency typically has gone out and done a bid, and as part of their bid specification, they are making it open for others to use. Piggybacking is one of the ways that they would do that, and that language is specifically in Dutchess County. When they go out to bid for many of the things that they do, they put it's a very specific clause that has to go in that lets the contractors know that the results of this bid can be used by any other government agency within Dutchess County. The state does it. We have state contracts, and it's kind of the same idea, where they bid, they do one bid, and then everyone else can kind of piggyback on it or follow it, use the same terms. Usually it's set out in some type of unit measure, hours, labor, tons, whatever the product might be.
Got it, okay. Any other questions? Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you for all the work you put into that.
Okay, moving on. Well, were there any other comments for superintendent report? Was that?
Just that, everyone is working quite a bit to prepare because school's starting in 3 weeks, and we're really excited for that. So elementary parents could access class assignments this afternoon on Power School. That's something new we're doing, but those were also mailed out today as well. I think secondary schedules are available next week. Just everyone's working really hard on hiring and all the finishing touches for the school year. We also have the last week of the middle school summer academy that's happening right now. It's not quite as many students as was in the elementary, but a lot of engaged students doing both enrichment and some academic study, and also trips every week. And then lastly, just a shout out to community organizers. This past Saturday was this Elijah Hughes basketball thing that was hosted here at Beacon High School. It wasn't an official school event, but it was, a really large gathering. Proceeds went to benefit the Elijah Hughes Foundation, but it was just a really nice gathering of I think people from all around the region, but there was basketball players from Newburgh and Poughkeepsie and Beacon, and it was just a really wide range of people, and it was really well run, and so it was cool to see that it happened for the first time, and hopefully more.
Cool. All right, moving on to board comments. Do you want to start with you, Eric?
No, I just want to add to what Matt said. I thought besides the fact of all the work that Elijah did with the basketball games on Saturday, but the district, I thought, really did a really super job in helping to organize him. Mark Thomas, the security staff, the Beacon Police Department, they were really there, did a really good job, and I just thought it was really, really well run they must have had almost 1,000 people there. I've never seen the gym that crowded ever, almost for the whole day. So they did a really, really super job, and hats off to Matt and the district for helping that to happen. So hopefully we'll go on for years to come. So thank you.
Nice. Eunice?
Yes, thank you. So I just want to give a quick update we had a policy meeting on July 24th. I was chosen as the chair, yay. So you guys have seen the agenda. There are 3 policies on for first reading. There were 3 that were tabled. We have a meeting coming up with myself, Meredith, and Matt. I believe Anne-Marie will be there as well, just to that's coming up on the 25th, so that we can make some plan for policies that we're going to be discussing throughout the school year.
Exciting.
Pretty much it. I don't know if anybody has any questions about any of what's on the agenda, but I guess we can cover that later.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's it. Thank you.
All right. Elena?
I just want to echo Matt and Mr. Shatter. In regards to the event on Saturday, I was there with my girls, and it was amazing. And I showed pictures to my husband. He was like, "That's Beacon's gym?" I was like, "Yes," because it was packed. It was packed all the way through, all day. And people just behaved themselves, which was nice. And yeah, so I think just to be a part of that, and have that in your community and be a part of that, I thought was amazing. And the kids just had such an amazing time, and I do hope that it's something that we can continue to do. And the efforts put in by the district, the security, maintenance, facilities, just everybody, it was just a job well done. So it was a proud Beacon moment on Saturday.
Anthony, what about you?
Just want to give a shout out to the girls in sports. Everyone should have received the email that it's going to be happening soon in the flyer. Last year we had 150 girls, so they're looking to make it even more participants. So besides that, all good.
Awesome. Samra?
I'll just say that we've been receiving good communication, and we had a great time over the summer in the camp for the elementary school. My girls loved it, and I've just been receiving good communication even from our new principal, Kelly. So much appreciated. Thank you.
Great.
No comments.
Okay. I have none as well. Okay, so moving on to new business, we have a few things that we want to talk about. The first is the tax credit for volunteer firefighters and ambulance workers. We have until March to decide on this, so the goal tonight, as I understand it, is to just gather any questions or comments the board may have for our district attorneys. So I don't know if everyone's had a chance to look over.
I was just I'll quickly go through the slides.
Oh, yes, sorry.
So just to continue what Flora was saying, tonight is just informational, obviously no decisions. We saw tonight is to collect questions that the board has. You all helped me do that, and so we could get back with legal. But we just wanted to review what this is, and I've been trying to educate myself as much as possible. So we may not be able to answer all the questions tonight, and we're in the process of gathering information from our community as well. But the law grants all local governments, including school districts, the authority to provide a partial property tax exemption to volunteer firefighters and volunteer ambulance workers. We have the option to provide a tax exemption of up to 10%. The key there is primary residence. So the exemption applies to volunteer firefighters and ambulance workers who reside in the community served by their volunteer work. So essentially, they would need to volunteer at one of the either firefighter organizations or the ambulance service in Beacon. So they need to volunteer within our school district, and their primary residence needs to be within our school district as well. And then this is a part that would be a further conversation, but districts can establish a minimum service requirement. The service requirement can be between 2 and 5 years of service. School districts can also decide on volunteers with more than 20 years receive the exemption for as long as they reside, even if they've stopped volunteering. And then, so process, we would have loved to have had it all completed by today. We are in the process of collecting information. We have received good data from the Beacon Fire Department. So they have 10 volunteers that they feel would qualify, under the broader parameters of this. And we're waiting responses, and we'll keep working on that from Beacon Ambulance Corps and the Slater Chemical and the Chelsea Fire Department. So we've reached out to all of them. They're working on putting together the numbers. So we envision at a future meeting just coming with here's our estimated number. And this is what the tax impact of this would be, because essentially this tax exemption would be covered by the rest of the taxpayers. So that would be the decision that the board would need to make. So the other part of the process is we would need to have a public hearing on this. Outside of what's required by law, I've seen some school districts do like a thing on the website where people could submit, their thoughts on this, so we could certainly do that pretty easily. But if we're considering this for the next year, we would need to do all of that by March 1st. My sense, this is just a guesstimate, my sense is we're probably looking at between 30 and 40 people is what I think between those 4 organizations. But that's just kind of an estimate at this point based on initial conversations we've had. And the Beacon Fire Department was the most clear with, they felt like 10 qualified.
What were the 4?
County. Yeah.
What were the 4 organizations? Beacon?
Slater, Chemical,
Later, Chelsea and the
Chelsea.
Beaver.
Slater,
and
Slater
Fishkill.
Chemical, Chelsea, Beacon Fire, Beacon Ambulance.
Beacon Ambulance.
Okay. And then, so they're being identified internally, and then what is the process for them being, once if, for instance, this went into effect,
Right.
how does that get confirmed going
Well,
forward?
that's a part of the conversation. We need to learn a little bit more about that, but like that would fall on us to do the confirming.
Oh, it
So,
would.
so a part of this is there's a school district responsibility to this, that we would have to confirm this with these organizations. I'm sure that's been part of the decision-making process the school districts have gone through or will go through with this. I'm not, I don't think it'd be an enormous amount of work, but it would be something that we would have to confirm on a yearly
Like
basis.
annually, yeah.
How did this get proposed? I'm sorry, that.
This is a law, Governor, that the New York
Okay.
State Legislature and Governor Hochul passed last year. So some districts went through the process last year, some are going through it this year.
Yeah.
I brought it
It's
up.
like the last, I'm not sure the timing of it here, but there was the veterans tax exemption. When was that here? Long time ago?
Did you bring it up in advance of the law? Did you bring it up in advance of the law?
I would assume the goal of this is their overall concern about the number of volunteers, and so they're trying to find ways to bolster
Right,
the
to
number of volunteers
provide
for
it,
these
yeah,
organizations,
yeah.
but it is up to each local municipality or school
And so
district to
each
decide.
the cities, the municipalities have to consider it as well.
Yeah.
It's not just school taxes,
Yeah.
that would be.
Yeah. Do we know if the city is
I
considering?
don't.
Yeah, okay.
don't.
And is it something that, you're saying that the verification that they meet these requirements is up to the, would be up to the district?
We'll get that a little bit more clarified with our attorneys, but it would have to ultimately, we'd have to do some sort of verification on our end.
Yeah, I
know a
think
lot-
that,
Yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
A lot of districts are having the chiefs sign off that
Right.
they did the volunteer because the chiefs have to oversee the house. So they're signing off on a lot of districts, or the head of the ambulance
Right.
as
Yeah,
well.
I think it would just be good to know, like, if there's some, oversight and auditing processes in place. Because I think this sounds like a very noble, and interesting approach to boosting volunteerism. I think it seems also quite ripe for
Right.
taking advantage of. So I think, especially if it's local organizations and the school districts have no oversight, direct visibility into whether these hours are actually being performed.
Yeah.
So, it would just be, and it would be very hard to remove that status from somebody once they have it. So it would be great
Well,
to know what mechanisms are
right.
recommended for that. sort
So
of
we'll do
oversight
further
audit.
research on
Yeah.
that part. We'll speak with legal on that and also other districts. I think what Anthony shared is what I've heard as well, like that there's a certification process on the other end, but we just would need to also verify it, obviously.
Yeah.
And then we'll do the financial part, or sort of the best stab at the financial part at a future board meeting. Meredith wanted to get the process going and not delay this anymore, so we are actively trying to get all that information. Are there other questions the board wants us to look into regarding this?
I think
for-
if we could have some examples of processes that our attorneys would recommend, I think that would help.
Yep.
As to, okay, the chiefs might sign off, but what would be the next steps?
Right.
Right, and how intensive is that? I think that no one's gonna, I love the idea that it may attract more volunteers, but they don't get it until whatever year range we set between 2 and 5 years, then it's a yearly
It's a
process,
slow,
right.
right.
So, I mean, I'd hope that it would increase volunteers. It's always good. Like, I know, from having neighbors' house go on fire and the firefighters come, it definitely is warming, but think it's something that we should strongly consider.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll work on those parts. If anything kind of comes to mind after the meeting, just email us. And I'm envisioning probably September, October, we bring it back with the more complete information for you all to decide whether you want to take it to a public hearing and all that part of it. All right?
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so moving on to 9.02, the next discussion is about our board vacancy. So right now, we are an 8-member board.
Did it just get darker?
The screen behind you went off.
Yeah. Anybody else feeling the light?
Ominous. So right now, we have a vacancy on the board due to a resignation. And generally, there are two options in this situation. Either we continue functioning as at our current numbers until the next election, or we appoint a new board member to fill that vacancy. So this, especially since we have new board members who haven't had to make this choice before, we felt like it was an important discussion to have about the two different options and the benefits and drawbacks and what direction we might want to take. Does anybody want to get started with the
Well, we
discussion?
started the discussion last board meeting, and it was decided that if people were interested, they should email the board. And I think I saw 2 emails,
Right, yeah.
people that were interested. So I
Yes. Mm-hmm.
think that's new information that people did respond out about the appointment process.
Like say for the two that said that they were interested, would the process be the same as if getting the signal? Like, would it be like a
No.
No, it's a very different process. And the,
explain that the actual process?
sure, I will explain it to the best of my memory, but please interrupt me if I'm leaving anything out. So basically, if it's an appointment, what happens is, we let people know that we're looking to appoint a seat, and then we would have sort of a public interview, and we would speak with the possible candidates, and then they wouldn't be gathering signatures. Essentially, we would make the decision. And I think having gone through this before, my biggest takeaways from this, and the thing I've really learned is like, essentially, it's the board making that decision rather than the voters. And then if there's more than one candidate, then it also ends up in a situation where the board is choosing between candidates, and it's not going to a vote. And then the board is sort of taking on the work of that rather than the person going out and getting signatures and doing all of that. So sort of, I would say it's a mixed bag either way. I kind of, having gone through that process, I see the value of waiting and having an election. I don't necessarily feel like we can't function as an 8-member board in the meantime, but I'm curious about what other people think.
So there's 2 candidates, right? They come in, they sit, we ask them questions, whatever. Now that there's 2, we have to decide as a board which 2. Okay.
Or we pick one.
Now, what happens if we can't pick one?
That's a good question.
Then it could be, so the process that Flora described is what the board determined the last time they wanted to do appointment.
Right.
We don't have to go through that process. If this board decides that they don't want that process, you could develop a different process as a board. So you could just say, hey, you don't have to go through an interview process. You don't have to, you could just say, hey, listen, we want to appoint so-and-so. It depends on what the board wants to set the process. Flora said what the process was the last time we went through it.
The process was, you filled out kind of like an application, or you wrote like a letter with answering some questions. Then, I don't know that we were interviewed privately. I think there was a public interview, and then, and you gave like public statements. I mean, the one thing about if we rewrote the process is just that, then that would sort of defeat the whole idea of doing what had happened, like the reason for doing it being what we've done in the past. That we're continuing with precedent. If we change the process and we're not following precedent, then it sort of doesn't, it's not a logical flow for, as a rationale to proceed. I was thinking about this somewhat as well when we were, after the last discussion. And I think the one key takeaway that I have is that no one who applied, who wasn't appointed, ever decided to run. Meaning, if they weren't selected by the board, they didn't pick up a petition and run. That's just the data from it. We had,
You mean like none of the people right now that showed interest didn't even?
they didn't come back, but, and I don't know, and what we won't know is, would those people have run had they never tried to be appointed?
Right.
Because I do think that there is this idea of how do you work with people who didn't pick you?
Yeah.
But I feel like when I was appointed, the people who applied were Frank Buggs, who's in with us anymore, but Frank Buggs, April Farley. And I thought about this because I ran into April. And she was like, oh, how's the board? Are you still on the board? So she was, and I thought, oh, April, that's right. She was part of my appointment process, and she never came back after that. And she was somebody who was pretty involved. April Farley, John Griesing, right?
Greasing.
Griesing, Craig, and myself, and then there was somebody else, I think. Do you remember?
How many?
And then you guys were appointed by the board.
There were 2 vacancies. Craig and I were appointed. But of the other people who weren't appointed.
No one came back.
Nobody came back. So if the idea is like, see if you're interested or something, I think that there is a potential for a deterrent effect. Whereas I feel like if you lose an election, you might run again, or you might come back, or it might just not be the right time or whatever. But then the second time, Barb Fisher, Travis Fisher, Jasmine, John, and was anybody else?
There was
Somebody else initially who withdrew. And then none of those people have, other than Jasmine and John who were appointed, if you were appointed, then you ran again.
Right.
So it sort of favors
They had
incumbency.
the choice to run. They chose to run.
Right, but I do think that there's a difference once you're, I can say as like a person who's appointed, you're holding on to a position rather than pursuing a position. It's a different ask, kind of.
And you
And-
found
I mean,
that
I
most
guess-
people who were appointed did run?
It's just the data. Everybody who was appointed
Right.
ran again. Everybody who wasn't selected,
I thought there was a group of people who were appointed and then just quit.
They ran, but then they
they ran,
resigned.
but then they resigned.
Okay.
They ran, they went and got their, well, it was different during COVID, right? So you
Right.
didn't have to get signatures
to
and stuff
get-
during COVID.
25, I think you had to get fewer signatures. Do you
But
remember?
they did
You had to get half.
run and were elected.
Okay. And then
So
they just
I could say,
finished the
my
term.
time on the board, everybody that the board appointed ran and was elected when they had to run.
Right, because I think it sort of favors incumbency. When John and Jasmine ran, they ran unopposed. It was a contested election in terms of not seats, but then who would serve the shortest term.
Right.
Based on the,
Because there were 4 seats.
right,
when there
and then when
usually
I ran after I was appointed, Craig and I ran unopposed.
And I think what I'm saying is, I'm not opposed, I would like to go through the appointment to see who applies. We don't have to appoint, right? If, you could go through the appointment process and say, but if we're not happy, we don't have to appoint.
If I went through the appointment process, I can tell you, having gone through the appointment process, I would have been devastated not to have been selected.
But I'm just saying, if you
and I
feel that
would-
no one's
don't know
gonna
if I would
work
have
with the
shown my
board,
face again.
if the board felt like the candidates weren't going to fit well with the board, and the board didn't want to appoint, they don't have to appoint. What I'm saying is, why not open it up, see who is interested, meet, see if they would fit, and then make a decision? Which is opposite, I will tell you, from the last 2 appointments. I did not want to appoint the last 2 appointments.
Yeah. And I mean, I've kind of shifted just based on experiencing it.
I experienced it and the board didn't want to hear about my experience. They
Right.
wanted to go through the process.
Right, I
Right?
hear you.
So I was the longest term board member. I went through the appointment process. I said, this isn't a good idea, but the board decided to go through it, and we did. And now that you went through it, you don't want to go through the appointment process.
The board decided to go through with it because I can tell you, like, I specifically remember that so when I was appointed, 2 candidates of color were part of the application process. Frank Buggs, April Farley. And they were not appointed. Craig Wolf and I were appointed. I can make an argument that Craig Wolf and I had been at meetings for an entire year. There was severe dysfunction occurring, and that we had invested a lot of energy in making changes. But I can say also that it was super uncomfortable being in that room and having that decision made. At the same time, part of the urgency, I think, at that time to appoint, I mean, I think that board had voted to investigate another board member and a couple of administrators. They had tried to, as I recall, after the election, appoint the person that lost the election to a vacant seat. So there was an election, then 2 people resigned. The last meeting before the new board started, that board tried to appoint the person who lost the election.
That's another an important point too, is that like 2 out of 9 missing just feels more urgent also.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, then I think when the appointment process happened last time, it was during a massive reckoning around like racial justice and systems. And I think that, I had just run unopposed. So people weren't generally interested in running at that time. And then I think there was this awareness of like, oh, this board does not look like the community it's in. And we had a board member who, took it upon themselves to decide to solve that problem and framed it as a very much a racial justice appointment. So then it made the process that we had followed previously, if we, I know that one of the things, fiscal oversight's one of our most important roles. Somebody who had applied is a analyst. Another person was a college mathematics professor, both of whom understood property and were, and there would have been merits for that. But then there was this focus at that time for people who felt they had been shut out of systems, and maybe that, there was this sense that there wasn't a belief that somebody could serve on the board or that they would be appointed. So it felt like it was appropriate to make a correction if there was that interest. It was a very challenging situation, and I don't know.
That was for you though, Kristen. I think it's hard to speak for 7 other people.
I mean, we
for
could
the
say,
board.
how did you feel at that
I
time?
did not feel
I
that
know
way.
you did not feel that way. Believe me, I am aware of that. But I can tell you that I could speak for myself. I know Flora probably felt very
I felt
similarly.
like there was a perspective that was missing.
But if all of this was happening, why are we sticking with the same systems? Like the same appoint? Like, why couldn't we look to change the way that we appoint the next 2, or to fill this role, sorry. So meaning for me, and we're all gonna be biased on just certain things that we feel, but I feel like no one should be able to just walk in and not get signatures from other people within the community when looking to fill a seat, and then have to wait to get those signatures when it's time for them to be reelected. And at that point, then it kind of goes towards your statistics, which is because they got appointed, most likely they'll run again and be elected and get the signatures because they sat. Yeah. So through all of this, why not? Because there's fresh faces. That has nothing to do with any kind of racial tension or anything. Just I'm advocating for, and it's probably a selfish thing where I feel like if I had to go out and get 100 signatures,
Yeah, oh, no, yeah, yeah.
No, and
the next person should go out and get 100.
There's no
It's not
legal
easy.
obligation,
would
correct?
think-
For us to,
yes.
we don't have to appoint or.
We can just let the election play.
Yes,
out.
and
Like,
that's-
We could leave the seat vacant until the election.
But that's tough with the 4 and 4. Then I go with that whole
I
4 and
think,
4.
but I think that situation is rare.
Yeah.
And I also think maybe the house isn't on fire in the way it had been in the past.
I think there was a genuine fear about who the board would appoint when they tried to appoint the person who lost the election, and then there wasn't like a clear majority at that time. But I think that, to me, the data point is, does it invite more people in? Well, I will say the second board member had resigned, saying that they were resigning specifically to make space for a candidate of color. So then that sort of, I would say, like, it put us in this, even if that was the intention and we were acknowledging that there wasn't, you know, it was like a chess move where it was like, because I also, you know, think that that person ran as a person of color. They said that they were Latino, so Latinx. So it was suddenly this framing that we were kind of boxed into. And I feel like both of these times are not representative of how I think we should function forward.
But I
And
think,
I think if it's about inviting people who are interested in, the process is not proven to do that.
so then change the process, not just not a point. I think the board has always made it a point and always had a goal of having a diverse board, right? We want a diversity amongst the board. When we don't appoint, we're limiting that diversity. Right now, if you look at the makeup of the board, it's 6 women, 2 men, right? And so forth. And, you know, are you like-minded politically? Are you right-minded educationally? Where do you fall? Like, and I'm saying like, not right, but like-minded. If there's a candidate out there that could bring diversity to the board, why not investigate?
Well, I thought the board was apolitical.
It is, but I'm saying diversity just in anything. I'm saying
background.
like, right, in background, experiences,
Education
perspectives.
and everything.
I guess for me,
That's sort of sheer numbers, though. Then you just keep adding people infinitely. That doesn't
Well,
really make sense.
that's you have a 9-member board, right? And
Right.
that's
Right, but-
that's the parameter that we're falling into is it's a 9-member, right now we're set up as a 9-member board.
Right.
If we want to reduce the board,
We
then
could do
then we
that.
could look and reduce the board.
You mentioned the 9-member board. We've discussed possibly decreasing that number. Is that still something that
Yeah.
is up for consideration? Because then
But that process
at
doesn't,
8 and
they don't go hand in hand, right? That process
I
is going to be
understand. I'm
totally
just saying,
different
yeah.
this would
than
make it easier. Yeah.
this decision.
I think my big question too is like, and I do still come back to like, I would always rather people be voted in than appointed.
yes.
I would always rather it be the community's decision and not just our decision. And I would like to know what parameters we're setting up for when we feel compelled to appoint, or are we just doing it because that's what we do every time? And I don't want us to fall into that. I mean, I don't know if that's the best choice to make right now, because it doesn't feel like it felt before. Like,
Are
it doesn't
we
feel
voting
as
on this
dire.
tonight?
No, I mean, Matt, when do we have to?
There's no timeline on
No
this.
timeline.
No.
But I mean, at the same time, like, this is a process that can take up to 2 months. So if we're looking to do all of this work
Right.
for somebody to start running in November, it's
Then
like,
they're appointed in November, then it's December, January, February, March, they could start getting signatures.
yeah, it's like a few months of
When is this
Then that-
person's up? Like,
to
when
me,
is
that's
this,
sort of-
this new, when are they up for reelection?
the next election
the
they would
next
have to
election.
run.
The one that's so,
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
April.
So there would be 4 seats.
yeah, right.
Oh, okay.
There would be 3 3-year terms and 1 term for whatever that person filled the vacancy for.
And if we didn't fill the vacancy, would it just be 4 3-year terms? Or
No,
wait,
it would, one would still be for
Whenever it would
John's
end.
remainder.
That's what I
term.
mean. Like, when was John's remain, like, when was he up for?
I don't know.
That's a good question.
I think the same time I'm supposed to be up, which is this
24.
coming- the 24. June
Okay.
30, 24, yeah.
So then at that point,
24, so it'd be fourth
So what
year.
you do is you then get the person who gets the fewest votes gets the shortest term.
but what I'm saying is, but at that point, if he was already up for reelection for
It would
this
just be
coming,
3 seats.
Yes.
Right, okay.
but my point, if he was already up for reelection for this coming, then why, mine's, I guess in a sense, it's like, so we would do all of this
And then
to
you still
appoint
need to
someone
Rerun.
and then have them re.
Yes.
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 If it was a-
Personally, I prefer to have the community vote on a member instead of me having to decide that. That's my own,
So like leave the seat open until it's, is that, you mean that?
where I'm leaning
Okay.
towards, but it doesn't.
Because I guess, because then it goes back to what you're saying as far as,
Appointing.
then we like flip flop every year when something happens, right? Like, depending on how we feel this year, we'll appoint someone. How we feel that year.
Yeah, I can't
Well,
be-
ultimately, I think that it would be, I think that it would be very,
Can we have a special election?
I think that there would be like
You can, it's costly.
Yeah, it's called.
my hope is that there's like, that there's a
We wouldn't have
steadying.
to- right.
Right, because it's like, there's, yeah, the people who run and get signatures, and then
wanna-
they want to
Yeah,
stay.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
stick it out. I
Is there
think
anything we
that's-
can put though in a policy or procedure for future? Like that, nothing, right? We just,
can't.
it's just.
I mean, or you mean like, we could have like a, I don't know if it's really a policy that you have, I mean, that, if you can't say you have to appoint, because then it would be determined by who wants to do it and who shows interest.
So at this point right now, we need to, if not tonight, at some point, decide if we're either going to appoint someone or just leave the seat open until the next
Yes.
go around.
Well, we don't have to, I don't know if we're voting on it
I'm
tonight.
not saying, but I'm saying that that's
Yeah,
kind of
that's-
where
that's
we're,
the- yeah.
okay. And then if we ever, but what if, when do we talk about if we decide to stay 8%, 9%?
I think we would have.
Whatever, what's the?
Yeah.
That always has to be preceded by, that has to be put on the ballot, right, to be
Yes.
voted.
We need attorney's timeline and process, for
Yes.
Oh, okay.
which I think we asked for at last board meeting.
And I think it would be 7. I think it would have to be.
For reducing the board?
Yeah.
Yeah, because Poughkeepsie has 5, like, we've looked, like, Poughkeepsie
Yeah.
has 5.
We're a small district and we're a massive
I'm confused,
house.
but we, right now we have 8.
Compared to the other ones.
Yes,
We have
but
8, we
would
usually have 9.
reduce to 7 if we did.
Oh, so you would get rid of,
You have to go down
Because
to
it
7.
has to be odd.
that makes, okay.
So Poughkeepsie has 5.
I like the 9, yeah. I don't wanna go that route.
Yeah.
Seven's a lucky number, what do you
I
mean?
mean, 5 feels too
That means
small.
two.
Five feels like,
Someone has to get that.
5 feels risky, because you need 4 for a quorum.
Yeah.
That's no wiggle room.
That's a lot of
Good
committees.
dedication. I mean, I feel like now the committee work is
So
divided
do,
up.
do we put something on here that says, okay, by this time we need to decide what we want to do?
I think, yeah, I
can
think
always
we
keep
need to
talking
come
back
out of this
around.
discussion with, yes.
Do we vote at the next meeting on whether we proceed or not? Or you feel like we should?
Yeah, I
determine
think
whether-
vote, I think we would, if we were gonna vote on it, we would wanna vote on it at the next meeting.
Okay.
But I mean, beyond just a vote, I guess it's more, it's also about the question of the process and, I mean, for me, I'm still torn about this idea of the decision just feeling so arbitrary. And I wish I had more clarity for us as a board, like when we make, like, when this feels important for us to do it and when it feels important to let the community do it. I don't know.
But I think
I don't
that's
know if
why
you'll
we're
ever
elected
know.
officials
Yeah.
by the community. We're elected to make that decision.
Right, but I want parameters around when we do it versus
I don't think
when
you'll
we
ever,
When we
I don't
do
know
what?
if we'll ever be able to have that, what you're asking for, just because of the climate, like Chris was saying, at that one time, like, I get it why you guys like either pointing, because the chaos of it, so you don't want to put something in parameters that would hold
Yeah, if things-
back that.
Because you can't anticipate,
Yeah.
right. It's
Yeah, I mean,
true.
hopefully we never go back to
Right,
that.
right.
But
Yeah.
the circumstances at the time that I was appointed, I
Right.
don't, that's part of all of the work that's gone in. But I can say, again, like I will say, somebody who's been appointed and somebody who ran, I think that you are a better board member when you have those 100 conversations. Like when you are out, or like if, you know, somebody helps carry your petition. So I will say I had 50 conversations probably this time.
And they do ask you questions, like
Yeah.
it was a learning experience.
Yeah, I think that that is part of the process. So I think that you learn the role that's in here. Like, you know, if you get appointed, you understand like how the meeting functions and how all of that stuff goes down. But you, and I think when you're appointed, I can say also because you ask for people to pick you, when you get into the room, for me, I'll speak personally, when I got into the room, I definitely felt this like, I wasn't on the same field as everybody. And then once I went through the process and got signatures and did that whole thing, then I felt more like I have a seat at this table. But that's just my experience as somebody who went through those two processes. And I think that there's like a seasoning and a tempering that happens in that process.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but I know what I'm feeling now is if we decide to go towards appointing, I want to add in they need signatures. That's just, I just feel that was not an easy thing to do. And it really is a testament to say you want to be a part of this thing, this board, and get to have people talking. If it's not the 100, if it's the 50, if it's whatever it is,
I mean, I think it's interesting because what we're saying to them is you have to get 50 now and then 100 in 5 months.
3 years later, 4 years later, I gotta go back and get 100 again. Like,
It's
that's
true.
still frightening.
Yeah.
True.
It's still, like, I've been sitting here, I go to my girls' game, like, and I'm still nervous about walking
Yeah.
around with these papers and hoping that I get the signatures
Yeah.
that I need.
Yeah. I mean, I
Time
had
goes like that.
people say no to me, so like, I will tell you
I
that
just hand them out.
yeah. I had somebody say like, I just don't like to get involved in politics, and so I was like, okay. And then it kind of like had a knockdown effect on all these people at this soccer game, so I was just like, okay. Go to Earth Day at Hudson Valley Brewery. Anybody will sign anything there.
That's
I
good.
thought.
Hot tip. Okay, so do we all agree that we should vote on whether or not we're going to go through an appointment process at the next meeting? Like, at the next meeting, we'll vote on whether or not we're gonna initiate an appointment process?
Yeah, that makes
Does
sense.
that feel like the right next step? Okay.
So is it just to say if we're going to appoint or not, and then when do we talk about, so then do we have to decide on the appointment process? Like how we're going to appoint? You know, I'm just trying to figure out,
I
you know,
think
we don't want to
Elena's
just
saying
keep
that
putting it off.
that she would want to add
Right, so,
signatures.
so then your point is then next meeting, we will say we all agree that we want to appoint. But then do we have to now sit and talk about how we're gonna do the appointment?
Right.
And vote on that?
We could probably say whether we want to change the process that was used in the plan. So the process that was used for me was the same process that was used for the next group. So this would be the only change or a change that would be proposed is that we ask the candidates to, or the, possible board members to get signatures.
So maybe everybody come prepared for the next meeting to talk concretely about what you
Yeah, so I
want
think
that
we put it
process
to a
look
vote
like.
whether we think we should do the process or not. And if it passes that we should do it, then we have a discussion about how. And then if it doesn't pass, then we don't need to have that discussion.
Okay.
So just to make sure I'm on the same page. So we're going to vote whether we're going to appoint or not appoint first and then talk about the appointment process? Or are we
I
going to
don't
talk
even know
about the
if it-
appointment before we get into the vote?
I think per what Anthony was saying, we weren't even necessarily saying we'll definitely appoint, but we're saying we're voting on whether or not we're going to go through the appointment process. Because we could even get to the end of that process and decide
Okay.
none of the candidates
I get
would
it.
work. And then if we decide to go to initiate that process, then we'll have a discussion and settle on what we want that process to look like.
And then they will run if we don't appoint them, and then we'll sit with them.
So on,
I'm gonna say you needed them signatures.
so when we leave on the 29th, I'm just trying to, what will we know at that time?
Either that they're
doing it or
not,
not.
we're not gonna go with
Okay.
the appointment, or we're gonna go.
Okay, good.
With
Okay.
the
And then we would just sit down as a group to decide.
Figure out the, okay,
Yeah,
got it,
yeah,
got it,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Understood.
Okay, good. All right, so we are at 9.03 in new business. This is the tax warrant, and this is a roll call vote. See.
Should she read the resolution?
Do I need to read it? Okay, all right. Whereas the school budget and the library budget for the city school district of the City of Beacon, New York for the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2023 provides for the collection of $45,880,626 for school taxes and $1,372,217 for library taxes as a tax on real property in the school district, and whereas the tax roll for the school district for the collection of school tax has been duly prepared, and whereas Florence Zopp is the collector of taxes for the city school district of the City of Beacon aforesaid. Now therefore be it resolved that the tax roll will be, and the same hereby is in all respects confirmed and adopted as the tax roll for the city school district of the City of Beacon for taxable real property in the City of Beacon and in the towns of Fishkill and Wappingers within the boundaries of the school district. And be it further resolved that the president and members of the Board of Education or majority thereof be and they hereby are authorized to execute the tax warrant in the name of the Board of Education of the City School District of the City of New York and attach its seal hereto. Hereto. So do I need to read?
Tax warrant stays in.
That's it. Okay.
So you say.
All right, hold on. I'm sorry. I'm pulling up the.
Doing a great job.
Okay. Eric?
Yes.
Eunice?
Yes.
Elena?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Kristen?
Yes.
Samra?
Yes.
Anthony? Yes. Okay. It passes 8-0. All right.
7.
Sorry.
There's one person missing.
7-0, and we're missing. Oh, I was so close.
9-member board, it would be
7-0. I know.
Just saying. I'm just letting you know.
There's a hole.
I feel like that was a reach, but that's
Just had to say.
I'm just giving you a softball. That is my one
I hit it.
sports metaphor for the night. All right, so moving on to the consent agenda. All right. The use of the consent agenda permits the Board of Education to make more effective use of its time by adopting a single motion to cover those relatively routine matters which are included. Any member of the board who wishes to discuss individually a particular piece of business on the consent agenda may so indicate, and that item will be considered and voted on separately, thus preserving the right of all board members to be heard on any issue. Are there any items that any board members would like to have removed from the consent agenda?
Yes.
Okay,
You got your pen ready?
I'm ready.
11.02. 12.09. I8.
I-8,
I8.
okay,
12.20. T.
okay.
15, 16, 21, 22, 26.
15, 16, 21, 22, 26,
Correct.
okay. Is that it?
I have a few.
Okay,
12.05 E2, 12.09 I3, 12.21, I got a little confused with this because it's under U, and then it's Winter 1 and Unified 2. There wasn't a number there, so it's the second person Unified and the one in the Winter.
okay, any more? All right. So, can I have a motion to approve 11.01 to going, 15.09 minus 11.02, 12.09, I8, 12.20, T 15, 16, 21, 22, 26, 12.05 E2, 12.09 I3, 12.21 U Winter 1, and Unified 2.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, comments or questions? All in favor, say aye. Aye, okay, passes 7-0. Okay, so moving on to 11.02. I forgot how I'm supposed to do this. Do I ask for a motion for 11? Okay, can I get a motion for 11.02?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, comments or questions?
Yeah, it didn't say who wrote the minutes, on the minutes.
Okay.
I was just wondering who wrote them.
It was actually Meredith.
Meredith wrote, okay.
All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Opposed?
Okay, passes 6-1. Okay, can I get a motion for 12.09 I-8?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Comments or questions?
I'm just confused why.
Figure it out.
I mean, I know why. I know why.
Well, yeah, explain.
But I just, is it,
She's asking why you recuse yourself from, or why you remove.
is it because that's,
There's a relationship.
okay. It
Okay.
just, okay.
Okay.
So cagey.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm in favor.
All those opposed? Okay, so
Abstain.
abstain, right? So that passes 6 with 6 yay, 0 nay, 1 abstention. Okay, can I get a motion for 12.20 T15? Now, would I do?
You could clump them.
Okay, T15, 16, 21, 22, 26.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed? All those abstaining?
Abstaining.
Okay, passes 6 yea, 0 nay, 1 abstention. Okay, can I get a motion for 12.05 E2?
So moved.
Second.
Comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, all
It's one of those same things.
Yeah.
okay.
Okay. Just making sure I was right.
All those opposed? All those abstaining?
Abstain.
Okay, 601. All right, now we are at 12.09 I3. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, comments or questions? All those in
I have a
fa-
comment.
Oh, go for it.
I think that it would be good for the public to hear that you're abstaining because you have a relationship or you are a relative of a person on the agenda. That might be just a nice thing for them to know that you're removing yourself from this for that reason. That did not always happen, so. it'd be-
Okay.
That's true.
Well, then I'll say that. The reason
thinking
I'm,
of it for the
the reason
viewers
I'm
at
abstaining
home.
is because of, should I be that specific? Why, or?
No,
Oh,
I don't care. I'm just saying, like,
can be-
think about the public.
Just there's a
Yeah, there's
close
just
relationship
Yeah.
who is
on the agenda.
taking part in these activities that that I am abstaining from.
Okay.
Makes sense.
Okay, so I think we're now at 12.09, no, 12.21, U Winter 1 and Unified 2.
So moved.
Second.
All those, or comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed?
Abstain.
Abstentions, okay. All right, passes 6-0 with 1 abstention. Okay, so I believe that's everything. Now we are going to walk on the resolution to approve piggybacking of the Dutchess County Department of Public Works bid for site work.
I have a question. Did you say all of 15, though?
What?
All of 15?
Did you?
What are you talking about?
Did you say all of section 15? Or no?
No.
I
Okay,
didn't say
just making
anything
sure.
for 15.
Okay, sorry.
No.
Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Explanation, so.
Okay, so can I get a motion to walk on the resolution to approve piggybacking of the Dutchess County Department of Public Works bid for site work?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Or, sorry, comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, so now that we've walked on the resolution, now we vote on the resolution. Okay, so now the resolution is on the agenda, so now we're going to vote on the motion. So I need someone to motion for a vote, please.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, passes 7-0. Okay. Can I get a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So move.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
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 It was Summer who's the second.
I'm sorry, I should have been
Very-
repeating them, sorry.
It's a very quiet one.
All right, meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody.